Stop! Please, stop! Please! Please! It's an accident. Sorry. I'm done. This is Brian Tober. This is my last video.
And father punched him in the face.
We got it all on video.
Yeah, it's on video.
I'm punching things. I'm not.
This creepy video shows how you should always check your hotel room for secret openings, just like this guy found. But what do you think it's used for?
So I check into my hotel room and immediately see this. You see that line under the door? What is this? What is this kind of service? What? Smuggling zone? What is this? This is crazy. This is a hotel. Stick it in where we at. What's that? What the fish that? This is crazy. This is a hotel. Stick it in where we at. What's that? What the fish that?
Hello, everyone here on Free Coast Camp today, and welcome to this course on No SQL. Mike?
The liberty to choose what you want to learn.
On April 16 of 2023, at around 12 a.m., a man named Jacob wakes up.
This is why you should always change your locks. In 2017, a college girl woke up from a night air drenched in sweat and decided to rinse off before going back to sleep. She propped her phone on a shelf, turned on some music, and then hopped in the shower. A few minutes later, she reaches for her phone to change the song, but stops suddenly. Reflected on her phone's screen was a person standing in the middle of her bathroom facing the shower. She somehow kept her composure, turned the water to scalding hot, and then ripped open the curtain and sprayed the intruder in the face. As they howled in pain, she ran past them to her kitchen to get her butcher's knife. In a panic, she can't find her knife, so she just runs out of the apartment and calls the police. The police go in and come out with a crazy-looking woman in handcuffs. One of the officers comes over to the girl and says she used to live here and she had copies of your keys. Then he pauses and looks down and brings up a clear evidence bag that contained her butcher's knife, and he says, "Looks like she wanted her apartment back."
There's something terrifying going on at Chuck E. Cheese right now, and I'm going to explain it to you. So we all know about the game Five Nights at Freddy's, right? It's a game based around a restaurant that's pretty much like a Chuck E. Cheese, where the animatronics come to life and wreak havoc on all the guests. But what if I told you this was possibly happening in real life right now? Just 2 days ago, 5 children have gone missing inside of Chuck E. Cheese, and the parents reported a weird smell from the inside of the building. And then, just like Five Nights at Freddy's, someone that worked the late night shift actually got killed after hours. Now, these are all pretty weird, but here's the kicker right here. Check out this headline. Night shift workers from Chuck E. Cheese claim strange movement from animatronics post hours. So I don't know. What do you think about this? Do you think it's real? Do you think it's fake? And I mean, with 2020 and everything going on, like, I wouldn't be shocked if it was real.
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew. When creating the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, they couldn't create skeletons that looked realistic enough, so they used real human skeletons. Since then, they've removed all but one. Ducks sometimes become cannibals due to boredom. meaning they kill and eat each other. This behavior begins as early as 4 weeks old. Crocodiles are capable of galloping, similar to a horse. Luckily, alligators cannot. And while we're at it, tarantulas can swim. It's extremely common after you die that there will be extreme gas buildup and you will burp after death. And sometimes dead bodies can even sit up on their own. Also, if a pregnant woman dies, the gas buildup in her body can actually forcefully push a baby out. In other words, a post-mortem baby bazooka. Hearing is the last bodily function to go after one dies. So it's very possible that the last thing you ever hear is the paramedic calling off your CPR.
This is why you should never stay in sketchy motels. In 2005, a young woman on a solo road trip across the country decided to stop for the night. The first place she sees is the Mountaintop Motel. It looked pretty cheap, but she was tired, so she said good enough. The check-in guy eyed her up and down very uncomfortably and then asked her if she was traveling alone. She ignores the question, pays for her room, and then walks away with the key. When she gets inside her room and sees there are literally cockroaches in her bed, she says nope and decides to sleep in her car in the parking lot. Around 3 a.m., she wakes up to see the check-in guy using his own keys to get into the motel room she was supposed to be in. A few minutes later, he storms out and slams the door and starts walking towards her car. Terrified, she hides under her blanket as the man tries to open her car doors but can't and walks away. She speeds off and calls her friend and asks her to look up the address of Mountaintop Motel so she can give it to police. Her friend's quiet for a second and then just says, "The Mountaintop Motel closed a week ago. If someone offers you this, walk away." In 2016, a man was staying at his friend's cabin in the woods when he decided to go for an evening stroll. A little ways down the trail, he hears someone call out from behind his neighbor's house. He looks up and he sees this skinny guy pop out from behind the building who starts waving frantically at him to come over. Worried this guy could be in trouble, the man takes off running to assist. But when he gets close enough, the neighbor just offers him a fistful of Slim Jims and starts talking about how much he hates his wife. Sensing there was something wrong with this guy, he says no thank you to the Slim Jims and walks away. The next day, the man calls his friend who owned the cabin to ask him what the deal was with his weirdo neighbor. There was silence on the phone, and then his friend just says, "I don't have any neighbors." The police are called, and it turns out his neighbor was really some lunatic who had recently killed his wife and had been hiding out in the abandoned cabin next door. This is why you always say yes to tandoori chicken. In 2012, a high school tutor and her student stayed up so late one night studying that by the time they were done, the buses had stopped running. Without another way home, the student asked if he could stay the night at her place. Reluctantly, she agreed. When they got back to the apartment, she fell asleep on her bed and he fell asleep on a blanket next to her bed on the ground. A few hours later, she wakes up to the boy standing awkwardly in the middle of the room with a very strange look on his face. She asks him, "What's wrong?" He looks at her and says, "I'm really hungry. Let's go get some tandoori chicken." Confused, she says, "It's 2 a.m. Just get a snack in the cupboard." And he grabs her by the arm and he says, "No, we are getting tandoori chicken right now." And he yanks her from the bed. Feeling totally caught off guard by this whole situation, she goes into the hall with the boy, and as soon as the door shuts behind them, she can tell that he is terrified. He looks at her and just says, "I'm not actually hungry. When I woke up, there was someone under your bed." This is why you should always trust your gut. In the early 1970s, a college student decided to hitchhike his way home after class. A car pulls up, a man offers him a ride, and he climbs in. As soon as the car started moving, the student felt totally uneasy, like something was wrong, but he couldn't quite place it. Without saying anything, he waited until the next time they slowed down, and he flung the door open and ran away. 2 years later, he's flicking through TV channels when he comes across this special interview with a death row inmate. And it's just the audio recording, so he hears the interviewer ask the inmate, "Why did you remove all the door handles inside of your car?" The man just goes, "Well, the first time I tried to kill someone, I picked up a college hitchhiker who got smart at some point and jumped out of my car. So, lesson learned, remove all the door handles." When they showed this picture, the student knew immediately that he was supposed to be the first victim of John Wayne Gacy, aka the Killer Clown, who had killed over 30 men and boys in his clown room and stuffed them into his basement. This is why you should always trust your gut. In the 1970s, a young couple decided to go for a late-night hike in the woods. A couple minutes into their walk, and the man remembers thinking, something's not right. He tells his girlfriend, but they just decide to ignore it and keep going, until he steps on something that felt really soft, like it was alive. Before he has a chance to see what he stepped on, they hear all this rustling in the bushes next to them, and they bolt. Years later, that couple turns on the TV, and a death row inmate who's about to be executed executed is being interviewed. And they asked him, was there ever a time that you were almost caught red-handed? He responded, yes, one time. I was in the woods, and a couple walked through, and the man actually stepped on the body of a girl I had just killed. I was hiding in the bushes just a few feet away. They didn't see me. That couple had run into one of the worst serial killers of all time, Ted Bundy.
So supposedly, this is what the fallen angel Lucifer looks like.
你在什么？你都不是怎么了？
Okay, I'll read the next on the moment. That is kidding. And this is what the moon looked like on March 31st, 2020. I don't know about any of you guys, but this is scary, especially with everything going on in the world right now. Pretty cool.
Let this be a reminder that there really are monsters out there. In 2007, a woman living right near a prison in California got home late one night and went right to bed. Around midnight, she woke up to footsteps on the first floor, assumed it was her roommate, so she goes downstairs to say hi. She yells out to her roommate, who doesn't say anything, and then in walks this giant man who she doesn't recognize. She runs upstairs, jumps in her closet into the crawl space and hides. As she's helplessly tucked away in this little crawl space, trying not to make any sound, all she hears is this giant man sprinting around their house, running into walls, flipping furniture and screaming in frustration because he can't find her. Finally, after several hours, she slowly opens the crawl space back up, crawls out and gets her phone off the nightstand and calls police. As she's telling the police her story, she describes the person who had broken in, and they stop her and say, ma'am, go back to the crawl space and stay there. We'll be there as soon as we can. It turned out a 6'11" convicted murderer had escaped the prison and was still on the loose. If you scare easily, I wouldn't watch this video. In 2013, a mine explorer found this entrance to an abandoned mine and decided to go have a look around. He decides to film his experience and upload it to his YouTube channel, where he had uploaded hundreds of other videos of him exploring mines, but he never once references the paranormal or ghosts or anything like that until this video. As soon as he steps foot inside, he tells the camera that he has a really uneasy feeling about being there and wonders if he should even keep going, but he does. Everything seems pretty normal until he gets to a section in the mine where there's a bunch of chains hanging down from the ceiling. He hears something in the back of the tunnel, so he pulls his flashlight out and he shines it towards the back, and he sees a chain swinging, and it shouldn't be, because there's no draft and he's all alone, and you can tell he's scared by the way he starts talking. Although he's totally freaked out, he wants to know what's causing the chain to swing, so he goes farther and farther into the mine until he hears something. People whispering in every direction. He gets totally spooked and runs out. If you don't want to sleep tonight, watch the whole video. This is why you should never open your door for strangers. In 2013, a woman let her dog out to use the bathroom one more time before bed. After only a few minutes, she starts hearing scratching on her door, which is typically the sound her dog makes when he's ready to come in. But it just seemed way too soon for him to be done being outside. So she decides to look through the peephole to make sure it really is her dog. But what she sees is terrifying. A deranged-looking man is right outside her door, staring intently at her door handle, waiting for it to turn open. As she's looking in horror, unable to do anything, he starts scratching at the door as hard as he can, never leaving his gaze from the door handle. She manages to stifle a scream. She backs away and realizes her dog is still outside. So she goes to the side window, but there's no sign of her dog. And so she goes back to the door to see if maybe the man's moved. He hasn't moved. His mouth is open and he's staring directly at the peephole. Then he turns around and walks away. With the man gone, she discovers her dog unharmed. His leash had just been cut. But that means he had a knife.
Terrifying facts about the ocean. Let's get into it. So we've explored rough. Yeah.
Horrifying websites on the internet that you should never visit, part 1. GoodbyeWarden.com gives the last words of 565 Texas inmates who were executed on death row. And some of the statements are absolutely gut-wrenching. with many asking someone to take care of their children when they're gone, and others insisting upon their innocence. Deathdate.info is a dark, morbid site that asks you to enter your name, age, weight, and height before spitting out the exact date that it thinks you're going to die. The site also provides you with 3 words that it says will be related to your death in some way. PlaneCrashInfo.com has an extensive database filled with recordings, pictures, and transcripts of the final moments of a plane crashing. And MidnightInTheDesert.com has unedited footage of the 67 exorcisms of Annalicia McKell. And trust me, her demonic screams will haunt your nightmares.
I was busy thinking about.
On May 14th, 2008, Brandon Swanson left his college just after midnight. At 2 a.m., he called his parents and told them that he crashed his car into a ditch and he couldn't get it out. He wasn't injured, he told them the location, and the parents set out to find him. But they couldn't find him or the car. Brandon remained on the phone with them, and he told them that he would flash his car lights and they would do the same. But neither of them saw the lights. 47 minutes into the call, his parents heard him yell, "Oh shit," and the call was disconnected. When police pulled his cell phone records, his last location was 25 miles away from where Brandon said he was. And his car was found in the opposite direction from where Brandon said he was. To this day, we still don't know where he is or what happened.
These are some of the creepiest things that have ever been found inside of the ocean. And trust me, you won't believe this last one. There's a 200-year-old fully intact train that is at the bottom of the ocean off the coast of New Jersey, and nobody knows how it got there. Just recently, scientists discovered that there are spiders that live and breathe underwater. This is a tripod fish, and they live up to 15,000 feet deep and walk, not swim, across the ocean's floor. And finally, elongated skulls like this one were found deep in an underwater cave off the coast of Asia. Nobody knows what happened to them or how they got there.
Two sentence horror stories. I looked out from the second floor at a bloody mess outside of the street and realized that my parents had been lying to me. They told me babies were bouncing bundles of joy, but my brother had barely bounced at all. "What's it like being dead?" the little girl asked me. I held her hand, looked at her in the eye, and spelled out "cold and lonely" on the Ouija board. "It's all in your head," my doctor told me, as we both stared, horrified, at my x-ray. The aliens interviewed every last human to see if they were good and worth saving. Then they asked the animals. As the rapture began, I was bitterly disappointed to find myself left behind, and then I looked up at the departing figures and saw all the open jaws already in the sky. My son wakes me up by screaming at the top of his lungs. It always gets louder, leading up to the anniversary of his death.
Scariest 2-sentence horror story. My sister says that mommy killed her. But mommy says I don't have a sister. I can't move, breathe, speak, or hear, and it's so dark all the time. If I knew it would be this lonely, I would have been cremated instead. My daughter won't stop crying and screaming in the middle of the night. I visit her grave and ask her to stop, but it doesn't help. She asked why I was breathing so heavily. I wasn't. If you guys want to see more videos like this, make sure to like and follow.
This is why some people are afraid of the Tooth Fairy. Now, most people know the Tooth Fairy as this sweet, fun-loving little fairy that will take your tooth and give you money in exchange. But there are some legends from Europe that go much darker than this.
And these tales often involve witches who disguise themselves as the Tooth Fairy. Some kids are actually afraid when they lose their tooth, so they throw it out as soon as possible so a witch cannot find them.
Because it's believed in some places that if a witch finds your tooth, she will be able to gain complete control over that person. So if she has that part of you, she will ruin your life.
There's one English legend that tells of a witch named Jenny Greenteeth. She was a witch that was said to hide in scum-filled ponds to catch unsuspecting children.
Now, parents would usually use this Jenny Greenteeth to frighten their children into obedience.
And the pond scum in which the witch hides is said to resemble green teeth.
So this story is used to encourage children to brush their teeth so they don't get gross teeth like the witch.
This is the haunting story of Jeff the Killer. Jeff was a young boy who moved into a new home with his family. One day, 3 teenage boys decided to attack Jeff and his brother. But Jeff managed to fight them off, leaving them in the streets with broken wrists and knife wounds. Unfortunately, after the incident, Jeff realized that he genuinely enjoyed inflicting pain and suffering on others. Later that night, Jeff's mother began to hear a strange noise coming from the bathroom of their house. It sounded like someone was crying. When she entered the room, she found Jeff carving a permanent smile into his cheeks. And she also realized that he had cut off his eyelids so he wouldn't have to sleep. Jeff's final words to his mother were, "Mom, you lied." After which he murdered his entire family and disappeared into the night. He was never seen again, but legend has it he's looking for his next victim.
This is the scary story about the sister. There was a brother and sister named Alec and Taylor. One day, Alec was annoying Taylor by pulling her hair and poking her. Taylor began to get very mad and said, "If you do it again, I'm going to kill you." Alec didn't care and then pulled her hair again. Taylor then got up and walked away. Later that night, Alec was lying in his bed when he heard his door slowly opening. He then turned and saw his sister Taylor standing there with something in her hand. Before Alec could even say a word, Taylor jumped on him and stabbed him countless times and killing him. Taylor then called the police and turned himself in. Taylor was then sent to a mental asylum and will stay there for the rest of her life.
This is why you should always trust your kids. A little girl named Casey grew up in a small town. She didn't have many friends, but she was always hanging out with her mom and dad. While the mom was at work, Casey would spend majority of her time with her dad by just watching TV. This went on for a little while until things started to get odd. Casey one day saw her dad placing knives in the living room. Casey asked, "Dad, what are you doing with these knives?" And the dad just looked at her and said, "Don't tell Mom." Casey did as she was told and didn't say anything. The mom came home from work and saw the knives in the living room and asked Casey why did she put these knives in the living room. Casey, keeping the promise to her father, says nothing and takes the blame for it. The next day, Casey saw her father placing knives in the bathroom. Casey once again asked, "Dad, what are you doing?" And the dad looked at her and said, "Don't tell Mommy." Casey once again said nothing and took the blame for it. The next day, Casey saw her father placing knives in her bedroom. Casey asked, "Dad, what are you doing with these knives?" The dad turned and said, "Shh." The mom busted down the door and said, "Casey, what are you doing with these knives?" Casey, scared, says, "It wasn't me, it was Dad. He's the one who's been doing this." The mom stops and stares at Casey and says, "Casey, your dad was murdered 10 years ago." Make sure to like and follow for more videos.
This is the scary story about the screaming. There was a teenage boy who was walking around a park one day when he suddenly heard a voice screaming for help, but there was nobody around him. The boy was very frightened and didn't know what was happening. The screaming sounded like it was coming from underneath the ground, but the boy did not know for sure. The screaming still continued, so he called the police. When the police arrived, they heard the screaming too, and also believed it was coming from underneath the ground. The police officers then got shovels and began digging into the ground, and what they found left them all frozen. There was a container with a girl in it, buried underground. The girl was badly beaten and bloody. They then asked her what happened, and she said a man kidnapped and beat her, then buried her alive. To this day, it's a miracle on how this girl survived, and the person who did it was never even caught. This is the disturbing truth behind a game that brainwashed and mind-controlled people. This game was called Polybius. It was released in 1981 at arcades in Portland, Oregon. Polybius became very popular. It was extremely addictive, and people would wait in very long lines just to play it. However, there is something very sinister about the game. People playing would experience very strange things, such as hearing the sound of a woman screaming, crying, and seeing demonic faces out of the corner of their eyes, and messages coming across the screen saying things like "kill yourself." After playing the game, people would have horrible nightmares, others experienced extreme nausea, diarrhea and vomiting, and others got headaches and blacked out. Also, they hallucinated and got vertigo. Some very unlucky people even committed suicide. Also, mysterious men in black suits would come and take the game's data and change all the settings, leading people to believe that it's a government experiment to brainwash people and control their minds. This is the scary story about the doctor. There was a girl named Abby who went to the hospital for a sickness. She had a very nice doctor named Dr. Knight. Abby was supposed to be in the hospital for only a week, but Dr. Knight kept insisting that it was not smart to leave yet. As the weeks went by, Abby felt sicker and weaker, and told Dr. Knight that she wasn't feeling any better, and that she was actually feeling worse. Dr. Knight assured Abby that she was alright, and told her to keep fighting. Abby ended up being there for a month, and it turned out she was slowly dying. One night, Dr. Knight went into Abby's room and sat down beside her bed and said, Abby, I am really sorry, and I hated that I had to do this. Had to do what? Said Abby. Dr. Knight then said, I've been draining your blood from your body for the past month. My wife is dying and your blood was the perfect match. I'm sorry, but I'm really not. This is the scary story about the mom. One night, there was a 6-year-old girl who woke up in the middle of the night to her mom standing over her bed, staring down at her with a creepy smile on her face. The girl knew something was wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. The girl then said, Mom. Yes, she replied. What are you doing? The girl asked. Watching you sleep, she said. Why? Said the girl. The mom didn't say anything and kept staring at her, smiling. They each didn't say a word to each other for minutes, but still keeping eye contact with each other. Then the mom began to walk backwards, still staring at the girl with that creepy smile, and then went into the girl's closet and shut the door. The girl then got up and ran to her mom's bedroom and saw her mom asleep in her bed. This is the scary story about the high school boyfriend. There was a girl named Jamie who had a boyfriend. She was just about to graduate high school and go to college, so she decided to break up with him. This made him go completely crazy. He began threatening her, and he called and texted her over 200 times a day. He began hiding in her car and waiting for her, and when Jamie told him to stop, he then came after her with a knife. Then one night, he broke into Jamie's house. It was 5 o'clock in the morning, and her whole family was home. Jamie's dad then heard something downstairs, so he went down to check it out. And when he saw his daughter's ex-boyfriend, he sprinted at him and tackled him, and then put a gun in his mouth and said, I will kill you if you come near my daughter again. Jamie never heard from him ever again. This is the scary story about the ceiling fan. It was a very hot summer day, and there was a brother and sister home alone. Their parents had gone over to their friend's house for the day. The brother and sister were playing on a small trampoline in the garage, and then they moved it up to their bedroom. However, after hours of jumping on the trampoline, the brother and sister began to get very hot and decided to move the trampoline in their room with the ceiling fan. After a while, they became bored, and they decided to spice it up by having a competition. They said whoever jumped the highest won. The brother went first and he jumped as high as he could. But when he jumped so high that he hit the ceiling fan and it cut off his head. The sister began to scream and cry and thought that she would be blamed for this because it was her idea to move the trampoline in there. She then superglued her brother's head back on his body and put his corpse in his bed. When their parents got home later that day, they went up to the boy's room to tell him they were home, but he didn't respond. The mother then went over to him and started shaking him violently, making the boy's head fall off. The mother screamed in horror as her son's body lay there dead. This is the scary story about the collector. There was a man named Tyler who loved collecting things, from toys to baseball cards. One day he went to the store to get more things to collect when a random man came up to him and said, You like collecting things, I see. Tyler giggled and said, Yeah. The man then said, So do I, but it's not things like this. Tyler then got creeped out and walked away. When he got home, he couldn't stop thinking about what the man said to him. He then thought to himself he was overreacting and stopped thinking about the whole situation. That night when Tyler was in bed, he heard something coming from downstairs. He was convinced he was hearing things, so he thought nothing of it until his door slowly opened, and standing there was the man from the store. Tyler screamed, but before he could move, the man was already in front of him and put something over his mouth. When Tyler woke up, he was chained to a wall, and he was missing a leg. Then he looked around and saw the man from the store coming out of the corner of the room. He then said, See, I told you I collected stuff. I collect humans. Now you're mine forever. This is a scary story about the strange dream. One summer day, a kid named Chris lost his footing and fell off a cliff. He landed on a ledge and it saved his life, but he was badly injured and had to be rescued. He hit his head on the fall and he was unconscious. The doctors found swelling in his brain, and he had to get surgery immediately. After the surgery, he went into a coma. A few days later, he recovered, and his friend went to go visit him in the hospital. Chris then told him about the strange dream he had while he was unconscious. In the dream, he was at a train station. There was nobody else in sight. When the train pulled up to the station, he got in. There was nobody on the train. He was completely alone. Then he heard a crackling voice on the speakers. It said, Next stop, final stop. Next stop, end of line. Something about the announcement sent a chill down his spine, and he jumped out of his seat and managed to get off the train. Just as the doors were closing, he woke up from his coma. The doctor said he was between life and death. He then said to his friend, If I hadn't gotten off that train, I believe the end of the line meant I would have died. This is the scary story about the purse. There was a girl named Cindy who was at a grocery store. When she saw a woman wearing a purse that she really liked, Cindy then went up to the girl and said, Where did you get that purse? The girl then said I made them myself. Cindy thought that was so cool and asked the girl if she could make her one. The girl told Cindy that she could show her how she makes them and to come over her house tonight so she could give her one. Cindy happily agreed. That night when Cindy got to the girl's house, the girl opened the door. She had a glass of wine waiting for Cindy. Cindy took the wine and they began to walk around the house and talk. A couple minutes later, Cindy began to feel lightheaded and she then passed out. When she woke up, she felt an immediate pain all over her body. When she looked around, she realized that she was in an empty room and that the whole lower half of her body had been skinned. A couple seconds later, the girl then came into the room and said, I was running out of skin to make my purses, so I took yours. I'm sorry, but your skin was too perfect. This is a creepy story about the friend. There was a girl named Katie who did not have any friends. She opened the park to meet new people, but sadly she never did. Until one day she was walking around the park, and a girl her age came up to her and started talking to her. Katie was ecstatic. The two girls began talking and playing games together. Katie was so happy she finally had a friend and asked the girl to come over her house. The girl gladly accepted. When they got to Katie's house, Katie yelled to her mom to come meet her new friend. When her mom came over, she asked Katie, where's her friend? Katie said right here and turned around, but there was nobody there. Katie swore she was with the girl all day. Katie's mom just giggled and thought it was cute. That night, Katie was watching TV when a breaking news alert came up on the screen. It was a picture of Katie's friend that she made that day with the caption saying, Girl's dead body found in park. This is the scary story about the kittens. A little girl had kittens and one day they disappeared. After a couple days, she asked her mother what happened to them, and her mother said God took them. Months later, the cat again had kittens. The girl's mother wanted her to run some errands, but before she left, she wanted to play with the kittens. She heard her father carrying a bucket trying to hide it. She then watched her father drown the kittens in a bucket of water. Later, the girl asked her mother what happened to the kittens, and she said God took them. Several days later, the mother asked the girl to watch her brother in the bathtub while she answered the phone. When the mother returned, she started screaming, What happened to him? What happened to him? The little girl then told her, God took him. This is the creepy story about the first boyfriend. There was a girl named Rachel who just got her first boyfriend. She was so happy and never felt this way before in her life. Every day she brought him over her house, and her dad began to get annoyed because she wasn't spending that much time with him anymore. One day, Rachel's dad told her that her boyfriend was not allowed over the house anymore. Rachel began screaming and crying and ran up the stairs and went to her room. A couple days later, Rachel decided to sneak her boyfriend in the house one night. When her boyfriend got to the house, Rachel tiptoed down the stairs and let him in. Then they went to her room. About 30 minutes later, her boyfriend had to go to the bathroom. Rachel whispered to him to be quiet. After 10 minutes, her boyfriend was still not back, so she went out to see what was taking so long. But right when she opened her door, her dad was standing there covered in blood, and behind him lay her boyfriend's dead body. Her dad then looked at her with a smile on his face and said, Nobody will ever take my little girl from me.
Give me your ransom bill. I have craved all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom bill. I have craved all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom bill. I have craved all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom bill. I have craved all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom bill. I have craved all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom bill. I have craved ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy all for the love of you. Daisy, Daisy, give me your ransom due. I have crazy
do you smell it?
This is the creepy story of Jeff the Killer. Jeff the Killer was once a normal boy named Jeff, and he had just moved to a new town with his family. One night, 3 teenagers attacked him at an outdoor party, and his face got severely burned, but he was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Couple days later, when he got his bandages off, his face was horribly deformed. He loved it, he said. It was perfect for his brand new personality. Jeff decided that he loved his face so much that he didn't want to stop looking at it. He didn't even want to blink, so he burned his eyelids off. And he never wanted to stop smiling, so he gave himself a permanent smile. That same night, Jeff murdered his family, but now he runs around killing little children with a knife.
Dis-moi qui est le plus beau, qui t'a devenir mégalo. Viens donc chatouiller mon ego. Allez, allez, allez.
This is why you should always lock your front doors. A kid living with both of his parents decided to watch a movie for their family weekly movie night. He then gets up to use the restroom. As he's in the restroom, he sees all of the power in the house cuts off, and then he hears 2 loud thumps. He locks the bathroom door and hears heavy objects being dragged across the hallway. The kid, freaking out, runs out of the bathroom and runs into the restroom. Once he is inside the room, he locks the door. As he locks the door, he jumps in bed and acts like he's asleep in hopes that this person who is in the house will ignore a child sleeping. He closes his eyes and hears the door creak at the same time. He squints his eyes and sees a man with no eyes dragging the bodies of both of his parents. The man dragging his parents sits his mom's dead body in a chair facing him, and then sets the dad's body on the floor facing up. It was almost like whoever read. He laid there for hours, knowing muscle he would end up just like his parents. He finally built up enough courage to read the wall, and the writing on the wall said, "I know you're awake." This is why you should always lock your doors. A junior in high school was home alone working on a paper while his parents were out to dinner. All night, he sits with his back to his door, sitting at his desk with his noise-canceling headphones on. Around 11 o'clock, he takes his headphones off at the same time his parents are returning to the house, and he hears his mom from downstairs yell, "Hey, Adrian, what happened?" Confused, he runs downstairs and sees right away what she's looking at. Muddy footprints all over the rug. He tells her, "I didn't leave my desk." And then they realize someone must have broken in. They look at the footprints and there's none leaving the house. They're worried someone's still in the house. They run into the garage, terrified, call the police. Police arrive and they don't find anyone in the house, but they do make a chilling discovery upstairs. The police bring them to the kid's bedroom door, which had been left open all night, and they point to the message written on it in Sharpie. This is the actual transcript of what was written on his door, which means for nearly 2 hours, someone stood in this kid's doorway watching him. This is a highly controversial topic. In 2016, a man posted on Facebook that the local police were going to kill him that weekend. That weekend, he died under very suspicious circumstances that we will get to. Immediately following his death, his YouTube page, which contained footage from his home's camera system, went viral. One of his videos shows a large group of police officers standing in front of his house for no apparent reason in the middle of the night. Others show what he claims to be plainclothes police officers casing his property. But the most talked about video is the one where the van shows up in front of his house, revealing a guy with a fairly high-tech camera who just starts filming his house. The man was found dead in his home after it had burned down, and he was found to have stab wounds on his back and his stomach. His death was determined to be self-inflicted. However, the debate rages on online. What happened to John Lang?
These videos may seem innocent, but actually have a terrifying backstory. This video shows a man playing Dance Dance Revolution while some teens unknowingly record him and make fun of him. 6 months after this video was taken, the man, Adam Lanza, would shoot his own mother
4 times in the head while sleeping, then drive to Sandy Hook Elementary School where he murdered 23 people. This video shows magician Tommy Cooper having a heart attack on live TV. The audience, as well as his assistant, thought it was part of the show, so they laughed along as he died on stage. This video shows a popular CSGO streamer showing off his new McLaren. However, he was banned from streaming a week later for hacking, and this caused him to have a mental breakdown. So he purposely crashed his car into another van, killing himself, a mother, and her child. This video shows a band performing minutes before the venue burnt down and killed everyone inside. Even creepier, the band's name was Burn.
Scariest urban legends from every state. Texas, the Candy Lady. In the 1900s, children in an unnamed rural town began to go missing, and people were blaming it on the Candy Lady. The story says that she would go around leaving candy on children's windowsills, and she would be able to lure them in by leaving notes promising more candy. This story picked up steam when a farmer found rotted teeth on his farm and eventually found the dead body of a boy with candy stuffed in his pocket. While little is known about the origin of this story, many claim that the Candy Lady is real, and her name was Clara Crane. Whichever state gets the most likes, I'll do tomorrow.
This story is called The Haunted Birthday Party. Samuel died on the 26th of November 2003 from a terrible accident, and only 3 years has passed since his death. But this isn't about Samuel, it's about his little sister Alice, who today is having her 6th birthday party. What's crazy for Alice is her brother Samuel died the day of his birthday 3 years ago. But as her first friend arrives, her stomach drops as she looks out and sees a single red balloon on the letterbox. You see, red was Samuel's favourite colour, and the house was full of red balloons on his birthday. But when they found him strangled to death by the string of the balloon on the very morning of his birthday, they swore to never have a red balloon in the house again. But as a new guest would arrive, so did a red balloon. Her friends were so oblivious to this, they just kept chasing the red balloons around the house. But 6 of Alice's friends died that day, all strangled to death by the string on a red balloon. The house has now been vacant for 10 years, but the local kids say they still see a red balloon in the windows.
Pictures taken right before death. First, we have this 18-year-old girl who wanted to get the most extreme selfie, so she climbed up a bridge which was about 30 feet high. And then she fell off, but it wasn't the fall that killed her. It was on her way down, she grabbed some electrical wires and they electrocuted her. This picture was actually taken by a guy who was just testing out the new camera that he got, and it shows this 14-year-old boy literally flying out of a plane. It turns out he was hidden in the plane wheels, and during takeoff, he somehow fell out, and it was caught on camera. This looks like your typical best friend picture before a night out, right? Except the night would end in disaster, with one of them using the belt she was wearing to strangle the other. And she then blamed it on being intoxicated and said she couldn't remember anything of the night anyways.
This is a dark mirror, and it's one of the most haunted items in the world. The original owner of this mirror purchased it at a psychic fair, but immediately claimed that there was something very evil about it. So she donated it to a traveling museum for the paranormal. This museum has a whole bunch of different paranormal objects, but the dark mirror is by far the most horrifying. The museum actually has to keep the mirror covered and tell people that if they're going to look into it, they have to do so at their own risk. Because the people who are brave enough almost always regret it. The people who have looked into the mirror claim to feel an immediate sense of doom and depression. But for others, it was far more horrifying. Some claim to see their own facial expressions warp and twist, and others would look into it and see their own dead body. The people who hold the mirror claim to feel a strange sense of electricity. And every night, the museum workers cover up the mirror. Every morning, they find it mysteriously uncovered. Giovanni, you
friends are toxic, ambitionless, so rude and always negative.
Don't you dare forget about the way they train.
Still don't take my breath and still the thing I know that you are
英雄の僕なるといつもこんな気持ちだったのかな。
Are you lonely?
I don't relate to you. I don't relate to you, no. 'Cause I never treat me this shitty. You made me hate this city. And I don't touch it.
All my friends are toxic, ambitionless, so rude and always negative. I need new friends, but it's not that quick and easy. Oh, I'm drowning.
That's the only thing you gon' get. I don't understand if you with me. Go around pretending as if they really broke me. So I love them all from a distance. But the same biz and she down the ride, be the main one.
Missa inte sista chansen att fynda. Sommarrean pågår veckan ut. Välkommen till Ekega.
And now I'm closing every door, 'cause I'm sick of wanting more. You were good to me. I choose you, I was to put you both first, but now I give
And it was your heart on the line.
I'm sorry, don't leave me. I want you here with me. I know that your love is gone. I'm sorry, don't leave me. I want you here with me. I know that. I'm sorry, don't leave me. I want you here with me. I know that. What about for about 5 years? 5 years I've asked. Sorry, I guess I'm emotional just talking about this. I asked Santa for a fat ass, and it's for 5 years. I'm starting to lose faith in that man.
We miss her too.
She must have been out of her head. Oh, oh, oh. Here it is.
So, do you know what this is? It's called the Devil's Face, and it appeared on the map in Atlanta. Atlanta is considered one of the most religious places on earth, and it was told that it could signal a sign. The plans in the land formed together to make what looks like a face that was seen from a satellite. This scared so many people within Atlanta's area that they began working on the area literally to wipe it out completely. They began cutting down the trees and flattening everything so you could no longer see a face. From that point on, the face literally disappeared. Do you think this was a coincidence?
Scary facts you wish you didn't know. Since 1948, 90 commercial airliners have disappeared without leaving any evidence to what happened to them. A girl was scalped on an amusement park ride in Nebraska. Her hair got caught in the machinery and it got pulled out along with some of her skin. In 1912, a French orphanage gave out babies as a prize. A home for the abandoned decided to raffle off babies to try to raise funds. While many people take medications to cope with feelings of despair, certain types of antidepressants have been known to eliminate someone's ability to feel love and compassion.
Creepy facts you might not know. Your organs actually move a little when you're on a roller coaster. Your phone is always listening to you. There's more dead people on Mount Everest than there is in the biggest graveyard. Not everyone dreams in color. You're way more likely to be killed by an immediate family member if you win the lottery. After a person dies, their brain still has activity. Peanut butter can contain rodent hairs. Your camera's always on.
Scary Google Maps locations. In Australia, you can find a glowing triangle. Some have said this could be a UFO, and some say it could be a remote-controlled wind farm. It's in the middle of nowhere, though, so no one has gone to check it out. In India, you can see a shipwreck. It's not known when this boat actually sank, but it's been under the sea for a long time. The boat is 256 feet long and is from Bolivia. In Baltimore, New York, there's a very scary place on Google Street. It looks like the town is melting. Some have said this could have been rain, but Google said they had a technical issue. I'd love to go to this place and see if it really looks that scary.
So guys, we see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace.